We've reached that point in the year where the garden naturally resets and the leaves drop and the growth slows and the plants kind of quiet. And suddenly the structure of the space becomes really evident. I love this time of year because when everything is kind of stripped back, you can kind of see the bones and the framework and the structure that holds all of the space together that you can't see in the summer. And there's just this clarity that comes with that kind of simplicity. With only so many hours of daylight, we're naturally invited to slow down. And as we're looking forward to January, we're considering what we want next year to look like. And it's not just in our gardens, but just, in our lives. Winter allows us to kind of see what needs editing, to allow for rest, and to get ready for the next season of growth. This week, I want to talk about how we mark this turning point, the winter solstice. Welcome to the Relish Gardens podcast, where we have conversations about the intersection between the garden and your life and how all those things are intertwined, how to care for your space, how to prune, basically everything that is related to the design and development of a garden and the keeping of a garden.
I'm Claire Liddell Hannon. I'm the founder and lead designer at Relish Gardens, where we build, design, and maintain beautiful gardens. Let's dig in.
I don't know that I ever understood the seasonality quite so intensely as I did moving up to the Pacific Northwest. I grew up in California, and so, the time changes. It's just not quite as drastic. My mom likes to joke. She calls it dark 30 o'clock. She swears it's dusk at 3:30. Some days it feels like the sun doesn't even quite come up. I seriously think it took 2 to 3 years to kind of adjust to the rhythm and this lack of light this time of year after growing up in California. This year we really experienced the time change, and I think it really affected our team. This lack of light, Stevie and I were talking about it. She's just like, I just don't want to be driving when it's dark, at all. I want to be at home, inside, tucked in. And I think that that's the natural response. And, we're all kind of pushing against it, and we're still going on about our daily lives. But that lack of light really kind of is there's a pull to kind of come inside. We have a lot of projects that they're getting finished up and things that need to get done. But we also are, we're definitely feeling that pull to just be inside and just to slow down, I think I look at this idea of holiday lights in a very different way after living in the Pacific Northwest. It's my observation, and maybe we should talk to an anthropologist at some point. But it feels like that there's this connective point between the lack of light and these traditions that surround this time of year and the kind of adding light to dark spaces. There's this book that my mom would get out after Thanksgiving. We'd decorate and do all the things. And I would just kind of pour through this book because it had all of these traditions that people do to celebrate the holidays around the world. And one of them, I remember as a kid and just being so enamored with it, this idea of bringing a tree inside and putting candles on the tree. And I was so enamored by that, probably because I grew up in Northern California and we dealt with wildfires all the time. And so it was such a foreign concept to me, this idea of bringing a tree inside and then putting candles on top of it. It was just a recipe for disaster. When I moved up to the Seattle region, it made a lot more sense because there's this definite pull to create brightness in these dark spaces. And I found myself wanting more of that light during this time of year. I secretly just kind of hope they'll keep them up until the end of January. Growing up, it was very distinct time about when you put your lights up right after Thanksgiving and you take them down right after Christmas. That's it. I don't know. Maybe it was just my neighborhood. I remember being in Paris in January and realizing that these neighborhoods all had lights still up. And I was just like, oh, it was just kind of a freeing thought to have. It's I can keep my lights up for just a little bit longer. I look forward to other people's lights. And I look forward to having a little bit of that light during a time that is so dark in this area. especially in my neighborhood. It's wooded, it gets dark, and you get home at 4 or 5 and it's completely dark. So having those lights to look forward to, it makes me happy in a very small way. Just like every decision that we make in our garden, including adding lights, we have to be conscientious. We're not the only ones who live in these spaces, and that, setting stuff up on a timer is great for wildlife and all of that kind of stuff. It's fascinating to see these maps of lights, and during the holiday season, the light maps kind of blow up. And so it's a great idea to get these things on timers if you can. Just like it's part of our rhythms in life. All these animals out there, we have all these lights on. If we have them on all night, it kind of like blows out their whole circadian rhythm too. Sometimes people ask me what my favorite season is. I think probably as a gardener, they kind of expect you to say spring or like early summer or something like that. But I think for me, my favorite season is really just the changing of seasons. It's that anticipation of the next season and everything that next season will bring. There's that anticipation of the next season, but there's also the anticipation of the return of the same activities that I've missed and that I only do during certain times of the year. And it's the return of those activities. I find myself returning to the same activities year after year. I know a lot of people enjoy doing all of the walks and all of the hikes and seeing all of the places. And one of the things I really love is going on the same hike over and over at different points in the year and being able to see those subtle changes and shifts. There's a hike that I love. It's the St. Edward's in Kenmore, and it's kind of starts up by this old monastery, and then it weaves you through the woods down to the lake, to Lake Washington. And I absolutely love doing this hike over and over and over, because what happens is you do it on a seasonal basis, and throughout a season you see the shifts in the landscape, and it's subtle. It's like, okay, we have this new growth of these like little tiny mushrooms, and you see the brilliance and the moss and that like really chartreuse green, and then you see it kind of die back, and then you see the light return to these spaces that are really dark for most of the year because they're covered in the leaf canopy of these big leaf maples. And then the maples drop in this kind of canyon area, and then all of a sudden you have this complete return to light in a time when we really just don't have a lot of light during the year. And so rather than doing every hike that I can, I would rather repeat my favorite hikes over and over. I have this like natural tendency to I want to see those differences. And the only way I can see those differences is if I do it repeatedly. I find myself during this time of year, I kind of come back to the same activities year after year. But it's like that same kind of like anticipation of these activities and these things that you do. These are the kind of things that like I miss when I'm not in that spot and that I look forward to. I didn't really celebrate solstice as a kid. It wasn't really part of my experience, but as a gardener, I look forward to that date. I think as I've grown as a gardener, that pivotal moment of solstice, the shortest day of the year, has become more and more important, because it's that kind of that changing over to building towards spring instead of kind of leaving summer. It's like at that point we can start to look forward. These different points on the calendar that we shift from the decreasing of daylight to the addition of daylight is a major marker for us gardeners. When solstice hits, you're like, okay, it's only this many more days till I get to plant my seeds, and it's only this many more days till I get to do, whatever it is in the garden. And it's only minutes every day, but you add those up, and it's like, okay, spring's almost here. The thing I think that is really so cool about the Pacific Northwest is, and I mean, I'm sure there's other places that have it, but it feels like Pacific Northwest is like got this down. There's so many different solstice walks and outdoor activities during this time of year. I've done the Green Lake solstice walk. I was looking it up while we were prepping for this, and the Blowdells solstice walk. A lot of these gardens and these public parks and all of these different places have all of these annual walks. It's kind of neat to see other people just to kind of celebrate in mass. Sometimes I just put stuff on the calendar and I don't actually know who I'm going to go with, but I put it on the calendar and then I make a point to make sure I'm inviting people to go to these things. It's this idea that we've made it through the darkest days and the light is coming back. Taking the time to kind of honor these seasonal rhythms as a way to, to stay connected to nature and the broader community and then also ourselves. I think it's a valuable practice, and just to kind of acknowledge the shift from that return to light. There's something really grounding about the marking of solstice and this just kind of like quiet acknowledgement that we're part of something bigger, and that these seasonal rhythms and natural cycles and this pull and push of light and dark. I think through my life, being in the garden and being outside and being in nature and watching it do its thing has informed and taught me about these rhythms. If we're paying attention, it shows us, when to rest and when to start looking forward again. I hope that as we kind of move through these shortest days, we find a way to kind of celebrate and acknowledge this turning and this kind of changing of light and the changing of seasons. And whether it's a walk through a winter garden or a community event or just like keeping your lights up a little bit longer than usual, I'm celebrating that we've made it through this like really dark time of the year and that the light is returning a little bit each day. That's it for today's episode of the Relish Gardens podcast. If you love this conversation, make sure to subscribe. We've got new episodes every week. And if you know a gardening friend who'd love this, send it their way. Sharing the show helps grow our little garden-loving community. Until next time, I hope you find something in your garden to truly relish.